Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction Company taking a look at a beautiful example of a Lindsay US percussion musket. Now this isn't quite a normal musket. This was patented by a guy named John Lindsay, and there's a story, I don't know if it's strictly true or just apocryphal, that Lindsay's brother was killed in a gunfight with Indians where he fired his rifle and then his rifle was empty, and then was attacked and was killed. And Lindsay, thinking about this, really came to the conclusion that what would have saved his brother if he had had a second shot that he could fire. And Lindsay went ahead, designed such a rifle, and patented it in 1860. So the concept is that it is superposed. Let me go ahead and just show you this right up close. So the way that a normal muzzle-loading percussion rifle works is that you, of course, have a blind barrel. You pour powder down the barrel, and then you stuff a musket ball down it and ram that into place. And then you have one very small hole that leads from a percussion cap into the powder charge. And so when the hammer hits the percussion cap, it detonates, fire from that goes through the little hole, ignites the powder, and fires the charge. What Lindsay did is create he has space for two percussion caps here. Each one of those has a little tunnel down into the back end of the barrel. One of them, this one, actually runs up to somewhere around here. This one runs right to the back. And so you load powder, ball, powder, ball. You have two what are called superposed shots in there. So you then cock both hammers. You have one single trigger there, and when you pull the trigger the first time, it drops the right-hand hammer, which fires the front charge, and then you can pull the trigger a second time, and it will drop the left-hand hammer, which fires the rear charge. Hence, surprise, you've got two shots in this thing. So like I said, Lindsay patented this in 1860. You can see his name and the patent date there on the back of the barrel. He approached the Union Army about potentially buying some of these. There was, of course, a big civil war going on. And in August of 1863, the U.S. Army actually went ahead and did some testing on these guns at West Point. And the testing actually went fairly well. In fact, they found one kind of unique and interesting benefit to the system, and that was that it tended to shoot a little bit cleaner than typical muzzle loaders. The reason being, when you fired the front charge, it of course was, creating pressure that acted in both directions, and it would seat the rear ball really deeply. And so when you fired the rear charge, that ball would tend to be seated very deeply in the grooves, and it would do a much better job of clearing fouling out of the barrel as it traveled down the barrel than a regular round that was just seated with a ramrod. So that's kind of cool. That's an interesting and probably unexpected and unintended side benefit of the system. The charge that this used, by the way, was 60 grains of black powder under a 500 grain bullet. So, well, two of those. The testing went well enough that in December of 1863, the U.S. Army ordered 1,000 of them for $25 a piece. Those were duly manufactured, and they were delivered in August of 1864. So not a whole lot of inventors got actual rifles contracted out to the Union military. There were a fair number of small contracts for cavalry carbines, but the guys who were trying to sell an interesting and unique rifle to the Army usually got rejected. So Lindsay was one of the very few that actually made a successful sale to the U.S. military of a rifle. So in addition to the Lindsay name and patent date, we have a couple of U.S. Inspector cartouches here on the side of the stock. There's also a U.S. marking on the butt plate. All of the metal here is in the white, and it is beautiful. This is a gorgeous example. We have a rear sight here with 3 leaves, 100, 300, and 500 yards. And the front sight is very typical of a rifle of this period. There's, of course, the ramrod, which you need for seating both of the bullets. And, of course, the Lindsay also was equipped with a socket bayonet. So this just slides over the muzzle, slides in there. This ring rotates down, locks, uses the front sight to lock the socket bayonet in place, and then you have a hand-to-hand weapon as well. The socket bayonet is offset from the muzzle I mean, this is a totally typical pattern, but I figured it's worth pointing out that this is done so that you can still use the ramrod with less danger of stabbing yourself on the point of the bayonet when you have to actually load the rifle with the bayonet fixed. Let me elaborate just a little bit more on the trigger, because there is simply one trigger and two hammers. So to answer a couple of questions before they get asked, this is a selective trigger, meaning that it fires first the right and then the left. If you pull the trigger down and just hold it, no matter how hard you pull, it only fires one hammer at a time, or at least it's supposed to. You then release it and you can hear it reset right there. Then you can pull it again and fire the other hammer. If you only have one cocked, it will fire that one, whether it's the right hand or the left hand hammer. So as it's designed, it's a pretty good, pretty foolproof system. Like it takes into account any potential configuration of the two hammers. And as long as you have a round chambered in there and a hammer cocked, it will always fire it. So those 1,000 guns that were purchased by the Union were actually put into service and did see combat. They were issued out to the 16th Michigan Volunteer Infantry, and they were actually used at the Battle of Peeble's Farm, part of the Petersburg campaign. And they weren't really all that well liked. So in combat, the Michigan Infantry reported a lot of instances of double firing, where you only pull the trigger once, but for one reason or another, both of those shots discharge. That, of course, kind of defeats the purpose of having two shots, and it, I'm sure, kicks like a mule when it does that. That's 120 grains of black powder and 1,000 grains worth of bullet going downrange. In addition, during some more extended testing after the Union had the guns, they discovered problems with that, with both, double discharge. And they also found problems of fouling, especially in the front fire hole. So that tube that connects the what would be the right-hand primer percussion cap to the front powder charge, that was a long tube, and it was much easier for that tube to get fouled and clogged up and then not work at all. So unfortunately for Lindsay, the guns really didn't go anywhere after that. He did also make 3 different varieties of pistol using this system, from small to relatively large. And he was a little more successful with those, but this system never really caught on, never saw any really big contracts. So if you're interested in learning more about Lindsay's 2-shot pistols, I do have some video on those, which I will link in just a moment at the end of this video. And if you'd like to learn more about the Rock Island Auction Company, you can check out the description text below, where I have links to their YouTube channel and their Instagram page. Thanks for watching.